Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Jess Diamond. Jess, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
I feel like we've accomplished something. As I said before we went on air, a bunch of people canceled on me for recordings today, but we're going to make this happen. This is going to be the best episode ever. And I'm actually very excited because nobody ever gives me insight as to what maybe we could discuss, or maybe what their life or career, how it relates to Keep Hustling. And you gave me a layup, which we'll get to. So I love that. Where are you located?
Right now I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up in Florida.
You grew up in Florida and Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, so not New York weather, you don't do winters.
No, but I was, at the time of us recording, I don't know when this gets released, I was in Boston this past weekend and we got 4 inches of snow and I was over the moon. So
you're over the moon, I don't have to shovel this, I can play with it, I can look at it, and my travel plans weren't totally destroyed, so yep. Life is good. Okay.
I was one of the last flights out of Charlotte and I got to enjoy all the snow on Saturday. It was great.
By the way, not to digress, but I think Charlotte Airport is one of the underrated airports in America.
I do not like this airport.
Okay, here we go. Shade on Charlotte. So my general rule about life, and has nothing to do with Keep Hustling, but this is just one of the snobby things in New York. My goal is that every once in a while, my snobbish New York side comes through, and this is a good one. I live equidistant between LaGuardia Airport and JFK Airport, which means I have an international airport and a huge domestic airport, a Delta hub and a JetBlue hub, literally within 10 minutes of my house in both directions. I don't go anywhere that I have to change planes. Anywhere, ever. I'm not going. I spoke at a conference in North Carolina. I went to Raleigh. I've done all these things. If I have to change planes, I'm not going there, except when I have to. And I've transferred planes in Charlotte, and it's not bad. Better than Atlanta. Atlanta's huge.
Yeah.
And also, you know what I don't like about some airports? And this is a good rant. The airports that want to be major airports that act like minor airports. Don't say you want to be a big airport, Atlanta, and then shut down your lounges at 8 o'clock at night. No, don't be a big hub and the lounges close at 8 o'clock at night and my flight's delayed. So that's it. We're done. Charlotte's a good airport. I'm sorry that we disagree on that, Jess. But whatever.
Only because American Airlines monopolizes it. That's why I don't like this airport.
Fine. I happen to be a Delta loyalist. So, by the way, Delta, if you want to sponsor the KHP, we'd love to take your sponsorship. But I do hear that, American Airlines. And American Airlines is not a great airline. Okay, whatever. Anyway, let's jump in. So I want to talk about a few things. I think we should talk about a few things. But first and foremost, you do something interesting. And that is you work with people, not just on personal relationships, but I believe, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, that part of your view of their overall emotional and long-term success has to do with all the facets of their life. Mm-hmm. Personal, professional, physical, emotional, things like that. Where does that, how did you get into that? Take us back to the hustle of Jess. What made you want to get into this? What made you want to we'll talk about the podcast, and take us back.
So never in a million years did I think this is what I would be doing or helping people with, but I checked all the boxes. I have a very traditional family where every single member of my family went to college, which I know it's not that common for every single member, including my grandparents and my great-grandparents. Everyone went to college, studied in a major, graduated, got a job in that field, worked in that field for the rest of their life. So I was like, okay, that's what you do. I went to college. I majored in interior design. I graduated top of my class, and I could not land a job after school. I had no idea what I was doing. I stayed on college campus because my lease wasn't up until the end of July, and some of my friends were staying there because their jobs didn't start until August too. So I was just hanging out, freaking out at the same time, and got a job, the most unideal job I could have ever imagined for myself. It was in a design field that I had no interest in, which is retail and restaurant. It was in a satellite office that I was the only employee, and I was 22, being handed the keys and security codes.
Social. Sounds great.
And
great
it was
career development.
Yeah. And it was 30 minutes away, 30 miles, but all on highway. So 30 minutes away from the nearest city, which was
You could
Orlando,
do 30
Florida.
minutes, 30 miles in 30 minutes. You're just going to slip that in there with a New Yorker? Come on, that's like a dream for some
Sorry.
people.
When there's no traffic. It was like 28 miles, but it took 30 minutes to get there in the morning with no traffic. And it was in Orlando, and I did not want to be in Florida. It was every single part of this job I didn't like. But I was like, it's a job and it'll help me get to my next job, whatever. So I took it, hated it, worked for 7 months, and then the global pandemic hit and I lost my job. I worked from home for a day and a half, I think, before I was brought on a Zoom call and they're like, hey, you're going to be furloughed for the next month. And furloughed is you get to accrue seniority with the company. So you still have your job there. You're not without a job. You're just not getting any pay and you have no work. So you're unemployed, but your resume doesn't show a break is the fun part about it. After that month, I fully lost myself. I tied my identity to my career. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. And it's not like I could go and apply for another job for two reasons. One, no one was hiring because the whole world was shut down. And two, I was in the mindset of my job is still there waiting for me to come back. So I'm not without a job. I'm just without work. And after that first month, I got another email from HR saying, hey, it's actually going to be extended an additional 12 weeks, bringing me to the middle of July. And that was my wake up moment of, okay, this has been fun. Not really, very sarcastically fun, but I need to do something with this time that's actually going to help me do something else with my life. And at the time, a year prior, I had wanted to become a personal trainer. And the guy I was dating at the time told me not to do it, that it'd be a waste of time and money. And I was like, well, I have a ton of time right now, so I'm going to go do it and see what happens, with no intention of making it a full-time career or really anything. It was just kind of like, let's just see. And Facebook does its fun little thing of listening to your whole life and sent me an ad for an outdoor fitness boot camp, which is perfect for a pandemic, that they're looking for trainers. And I was like, oh, I'm going to become a trainer. So I started with that. And I basically got high off of helping other people. And that was that switch of, wait a minute, I don't want this corporate life. I don't want this desk job life. I want to be active outside, helping people, not having to report to anyone. Like, that's what I want for myself. So then it became a matter of how. How do I do that? And originally, I was unemployed for 6 months before my mom, and then started personal training throughout this time. My mom told me, hey, screw the personal training dream, go get a real job again. She was paying my rent at the time. She's like, you need an income.
She's like, this is payroll that I didn't, this is not continuing. You've been furloughed.
Yes. And my mom basically shot down all of my dreams that I had for taking this personal training route. And once I went back to the real world, I got another corporate job at a different firm that had actual employees there, and I had coworkers, and it was residential design, which is a little bit more entertaining for me. But once I found that I liked helping people, designing multi-million-dollar houses for people who are already rich and fine in their life just does not feel as gratifying, even in the slightest. So I went back with the mission to get out, and my mom started to help me with what that get out ticket looks like. And that brought me into health and life coaching, where I became a coach to help 20-somethings get their health and their life together so that they can be a fully functioning adult. That was the original mission. And it was through working through my own story, through working with different clients originally on their health goals, and then how it kind of started to spread into their career and needing help with their community and needing help with their confidence, and all these other areas, that I started to refine what it is that I actually do. And I have an Own Your Life system that really clearly takes any young adult from that feeling of stuckness and frustration and confusion to having that full confidence in themselves, in who they are, what they're doing, and where they're going in their life.
First of all, wow. Second of all, thank you for hustling through all that and getting to where you are today. I have a lot of questions. Normally I don't. This might go in a different direction than I was planning, but that's fine. You said something that I hope it's okay that I'm going to press you on. Because I very rarely take notes, but this was a note I took. I lost myself and started defining myself by my career.
Yes.
That was what you said.
Yes.
In your first job, early on.
Yep.
If you don't mind, take us there. What does that mean? And more importantly, what does it mean when you realize that? How would you, not what you did, because that could be relevant or not, but with the experience that you have now, what would you say to yourself then?
All right. So I'll take you back to the first day I was without a job. It was very difficult for me to find a reason to get out of bed because for the past 7 months, my job was the reason I got out of bed. My job was my purpose. And I didn't take into account that I am so much more than the work that I do or the work that I did. Because I feel like I'm back in that the work I do is my identity because it's me, it's my business, it's my baby. But when you're working under someone else, that's not you. You're a number in that company. You don't have full purpose. You're not making a difference. If you, like, horrible example, but if you die, your spot's getting replaced the next day. You do
2
not
days later, 2 days, 2 days.
Yes. So to be in that mindset of, oh my God, I have nothing to live for, is how I realized I tied my entire worth and my identity to my 9 to 5, which in hindsight sounds ridiculous, but no one tells you otherwise. So I don't blame younger me for going through that and for having that realization and going through that development of like, what is my life? Who am I outside of my interior design job? And starting to explore what I actually like to do and what lights my soul on fire and what gives me passion and interest and what I like to learn about. And that's where I started to build up my identity outside of my career, outside of being an interior designer.
Do you think that many young people today believe that when they come out of college, their identity should be tied to their career?
I don't think
Or do you think that that's something that we've gotten to? Meaning, obviously, if somebody is going to commit a large portion of their life to go to medical school, then their identity, obviously, because they're living and breathing medicine and studying in boards and that stuff, obviously, I can see that saying like, I become the doctor or the future doctor or the person in medicine, because from the time I'm 19 or 18 when I enter college till the time I'm 30, maybe I have relationships, maybe I don't, but that's hardcore. You know what I mean? Someone who wants to be the world's biggest neurosurgeon, to be board certified in 4 different things, that you, I almost think you can't do it unless you agree that it's your identity. But is that something that you're seeing? Maybe I asked the question wrong. Is that something that you're seeing shifting? Meaning where it used to be that people define themselves by their career, by the job they could get, by how much money they can make. And maybe one of the things you're trying to change is that isn't, or that shouldn't be anymore. Maybe that worked for our grandparents who had to work in coal mines and figure it out, or they were immigrants or whatever. But for us, we have luxuries of redefining that.
Yeah, I would say it shouldn't be, regardless if you're trying to be the top neurosurgeon or not. And I say that because as you grow and develop and experience and encounter different experiences, you might want to change your mind on what you're doing for a living. And if you have tied your identity to your career and that title, that label, however you want to define it, then it keeps you trapped. It makes it a lot harder to break into a different industry or to try something new or to take that risk. So there is that separation that needs to happen. I think it's a both and of, yes, that is what you do. It might be a piece of who you are, but it's not who you are from like a soul standpoint.
I absolutely love that. And one of the things that I feel like the loyal listeners of the Keep Hustling podcast, whoever they are, wherever they are, and we appreciate you, are going to feel like I say this ad nauseum, is my goal here on this podcast, why it's called Keep Hustling and not just hustle to death, is that one of the things that we have to do is realize that even if our obligation is to hustle and to put our best foot forward every day, we have the obligation to redefine that hustle as necessary. And that could be because a career is not for me. That could be because it's impacting my health. It's impacting my happiness. I thought this was going to be healthy. Now, again, I don't think that anyone would say, and I'm not advocating for a person who has a job at a company just saying, I'm not showing up today and tomorrow and the next day and canning and messing over their employees, and their employers, I mean. That's not, I don't, that's what I mean is people should say, this is not for me. And I thought this was for me. And I think one of the most interesting parts of your story, which is super fascinating to me, is the same person that furloughed you from paying your rent, the second person to furlough you, your mom, also was the person who you credited with helping you define and redefine what your hustle would be. And didn't say, and I think that a lot of parents lose that, in that she didn't say, no, this is what you committed to do. This is the degree you have. This is what you're doing. And suck it up. And when I was your age, I didn't have a choice of what I wanted to do. And that's it. It was, okay, you're not quitting on life. You're not saying that you just want to sit in the basement and play video games or play the guitar. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know what I mean? Like, you're not giving up on that. You want to do something. You want to redefine that. And that's what I call redefining the hustle. And you've done that, which is incredible at such a young age. And I feel like more people could do that. That doesn't mean quit on something right away. I'm just saying, as you said, if it becomes something that doesn't work for you. But I just think it's fascinating that your mother was like behind that.
Yeah. And I know where my mom was coming from. Definitely not in the moment. In the moment, I was so distraught. I was so upset. But looking back, is I know she needed me to have a plan. I needed me to have a plan. And jumping headfirst into personal training was not having a plan. It was something I really wanted to do. It was something that excited me, and I knew it was something that wasn't going to go away. I'm still a personal trainer to this day. I coach group fitness classes and one-on-one on top of my coaching business. It's always going to be a part of me because fitness has always been a part of me. But
I thought you were going to say, she's like, listen, Jess, you and athleticism, it's not a thing. Like, let's focus on something else.
No, but that's where you were saying of it. It's not just quitting right now. It's having a plan. I mean, I even helped a client quit her job with nothing lined up last month, but it wasn't a quit in the moment situation. It was, we thought this through. We looked at her savings. We thought about, like, she's now a fiance. She got engaged a couple of weeks ago, but she knew that she could live with him and he was willing to support her. It was a very unique situation. I would not recommend everybody quit with nothing lined up, but it's also knowing that your job is making you so mentally unhealthy that you can't even begin to explore other opportunities. Then yeah, you do need a plan for how you're going to carry yourself through that in-between time, and the stress, know the stress ahead of time of what that looks like, so that we can put those measures in place for when you are ready to go back into the workforce and you're applying for jobs and what those jobs look like for you and all the steps that are needed to take. So it's, as you're saying, it's not quitting just because you're unhappy. It's making a plan and then taking action towards that plan. I knew I was leaving my interior design job, the second job that I got out of school. I knew I was leaving it 11 months prior to actually leaving it. And during that time, it was, I'm saving, I'm doing the certification, I'm taking on clients, I'm making plans to fully move out of Florida. It was a lot happening at once. It was like, I turned 25, I handed in the keys to my job, I drove a U-Haul up to Charlotte. It was literally all within the same 24 hours. Kind of crazy. But again, it was planned for. I knew it was happening well in advance.
I am super fascinated in the example that you just gave. Like, what makes, I don't want a lot of details because obviously that's not, but how old is the person who you just spoke about? The person who you planned and helped them like set up?
She's 30.
30. What makes a 29, 30-year-old person think, I need to speak to a Jess? Meaning, like, is there a crisis? Is there someone who sees crisis? Meaning, what is the time? And don't say everyone should, okay? Because everyone should also buy insurance from me, but they don't. Meaning, when should a person say, I need an outside party? Because again, this person had a partner, a boyfriend or girlfriend, and is now their fiance. So it wasn't like a fly-by-night relationship. And yet they realized that they needed another advisor, another counselor, another ear, another person with their best interest in mind in their corner. So what makes a person, I don't want to say it's people hit rock bottom because that can't be the answer. So who calls you and when should they and why?
So there's a lot of different answers for this. And I will say, you can have a partner, you can have a really supportive parent, you can have your best friend, you can have those people in your corners, you can have a therapist. Those are all great. A coach helps you with that plan. you're realizing you want more for yourself. Maybe you don't know what that looks like. Maybe you don't know the steps you need to take to get there. I reverse engineer everything you say you want back to where you're at right now, what you're coming to me, that position. Some people are at rock bottom. I find it a lot more common with my male clients than with my female clients.
Here we go.
They come to me when they have reached that bottom moment.
Because that's ego.
Yes. And they're like, okay, I need some serious help right now. Whereas females, they tend to see the direction they're going. They're like, I don't like this. I don't know how to change courses though. So this particular client actually originally came to me with help with nutrition because I do nutrition coaching as well. And once it's funny because everything is so related. It's so intertwined. So once we were getting her nutrition dialed in and she was eating right for her body, mostly whole foods, the right protein, she started moving her body regularly, like all those things, it started to become really clear what other parts of her life weren't working. So her body was just throwing off all these alarms all at once that when we started to quiet the health ones, she realized her work ones were firing too. And that was maybe under wraps because she was so distracted by the low energy she was feeling from the way she wasn't taking care of herself. So it evolves into what else are we working on? It's why initially a certain time frame that we're working together, but it's never we are done working together after it's 3 months. After those 3 months are over, sometimes, yeah, it is. You're great. You are on your own. You feel great. A majority of the time, you're going to keep working because there's going to be something else that comes up based on the work that we were already doing together. And that's the foundation that we put in place that you can now build off of.
I love that. I might have done this once before in 70 plus episodes. You have a podcast.
Yes.
And I want to ask you about that. But first of all, what is the name of your podcast?
My podcast is How to 20 something. So spell out the number 20, but 20 something.
How to 20 something. Now, what is the biggest mistake that 20 somethings make?
Ooh, it's so different based on 20 somethings. I think the biggest mistake is thinking that you know it all.
Do people really think that? Do you honestly think that the average 20 something in their heart of hearts thinks that they know it all? I'm being serious. People like to say that. I want to know seriously.
I think it kind of goes like this throughout your 20s. So like in a wave where you graduate and you're on top of the world because you're coming off of being top dogs in college. So you kind of have that mindset, that ego of, yeah, I got this, from like 22, 23, maybe 24. And then 24, 25, 26, you're like, I know absolutely nothing, but I'm starting to maybe figure it out based on those experiences that I had in my early 20s. And then as you get towards your later 20s, it's like, okay, I have my grounds a little bit more. Obviously, this timeline varies from individual to individual. I think your personal experiences vary that will impact this. Like for me, I experienced losing my job or struggling to find a job, losing my job, finding my passion, and like going through a rough breakup, trying to make friends, like all of that within the first year and a half, 2 years of graduating college. A lot of people don't experience all of that until like their entire 20s. So, and I have college students that are clients and they'll hit their version of rock bottom at 20. And I'm like, hey, you're ahead of the game. I've talked to 30-year-olds who are at their rock bottom moment. Like you're here, so you don't want to go back here. But I guess like there's not really a timeline for it. But I do think that there is a sense of arrogance that happens in your 20s that you're falsely believing into. And it could be something like, yeah, I'm perfectly healthy. I do a 45-minute class every single day and I have a full-time job. And then on the weekends, I am drinking and partying with my friends. And I was like, that's not a sustainable plan long-term. Sure, lower 20s, live it up, cool. But you need to start thinking about what future you is going to be doing and what your interests are and how you're going to end up feeling. I very much promote a saying of think with your future self in mind. And that future you could be 5 minutes from now, 5 hours, 5 weeks, 5 years, like does not matter, but it's the decisions you're making right now and knowing that the decisions you're making right now are going to impact some future version of you down the line. And that's the part that a lot of 20 somethings miss. They think that they know for themselves already. And I'm like, you don't.
Do you think most people figure it out or would figure it out by the time they get to like 20s ego, 30s disaster, but like mid 40s, the average person is good?
No,
Okay,
I think
I agree. I agree with you. I agree that I think that one of the problems with our society is that most people don't figure it out, and that's the problem. One of my closest friends likes to say, if you leave things up to the average human to figure it out, then I'm not going to use the full language, but you're an idiot.
so. I help people figure their life out. That is what I do. And the way I say it is that having your life figured out does not mean you know exactly what you're going to be doing in 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. It's knowing what you're working towards right now and what you want for yourself right now and what it takes to get there. That's having it figured out. So that's why I say, like, no, it's not, I don't know what I'm going to be doing in several years. Like, I don't have everything figured out. I know what I'm doing today. I know what I'm doing. I have goals for this year. I know what I'm constantly working towards. And that's what I like to help other people realize is like, if you think I have to have everything figured out for the rest of my life, you're going to be so overwhelmed and not want to do anything. That's scary. That's terrifying to think about everything else because you can't plan for that. You can't even plan for like 6 months down the line.
I love everything about this. This is like, by the way, we spoke about before we went here. Like, this is totally where I was going to take not where I was going to take the podcast, but I actually like love it. What do you think is the number one thing or skill that parents can give their kids so that they don't have a disastrous 20s and early 30s? Meaning, obviously, everyone has to figure things out, and I think that's part of life. But like, there are people who probably have skills or life things in there when they're growing up that better prepare them for the avalanche that is the real world.
It's a good question. No one's ever asked me this. I think what comes to mind first is, and it's based off of my own story that you heard a couple minutes ago at the beginning of this episode, it's believe in your kid. Don't fully let them rely on you for everything. Give them the little push that they need, but you want your kid to know that you've got their back, that you're there in case all else fails. They shouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'll just move back home. It's all good. It's like, no, try, but know that your backup plan, if all else goes wrong, you do have that option. You do have a place where you can have a roof over your head and somewhere to recollect yourself to get back out there again. I feel like since the pandemic, a lot of 20 somethings had to move back home. I was almost in that position. The only reason why I was not in that position is because my mom worked in a hospital in North Miami. And it was not an option for me to go home because everything was so scary and unknown. But to anyone else that had to move back home with their parents, a lot of times they just got comfortable with it. And they're still there. And they're in their late 20s and they're still there. And it's one thing to go back home to save money, to buy a house, to move out. That's, again, going back to having a plan. And it's another to just call it quits and be like, mom and dad will take care of me. So mom and dad listening, don't fully take care of your 20 something. They do need to learn how to be an adult for themselves and make decisions for themselves and take risks. But they do need to know that you're going to be there just in case.
100%. I love that. And I love that. I fall down, you got to get back up and know that. I think that oftentimes kids think that their parents didn't struggle as much as they did. Like, every person struggles. Like, obviously we have like idealized view of parents. And I think that one of the things that I'm lucky about, that my parents are very honest with me growing up, especially my father, who should rest in peace, was like, not all the details, because like, again, some of the details are not relevant, but like, wasn't like this. Wasn't always a house. Wasn't always like, my kid has a school trip, so we go to Walgreens and they get to pick 4 candies because they want to be the coolest kid on the bus with the school. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't always like that. It was not even close for a long time. So I love that. Wow. Gosh, this was fun. We got to do another episode to really talk about what we wanted to. But Jess, this is awesome. Love this. Thank you for the episode. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for being on the podcast. Everyone should, if you're in your 20s, even not, I would say early 30s, listen to Jess's podcast. We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put the full bio in the show notes, as I always say. We ask our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational, inspirational quote and what it means to them and how it inspires their hustle. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you, Jess, and thanks again.
All right. First, I want to say thanks for having me. I've loved this conversation. So I hope everyone listening has also loved it. And the quote that I live by, and it's not a positive quote because it's meant for the more negative times in your life, since usually when everything's going well and everything's going happy, you're not thinking about what's my motivational quote, what's going to keep me going. It's when you are down in the dumps, you need these reminders. So mine is, it's not forever, it's for now. And it's what I told myself when I was unemployed. It's what I told myself when I was working towards getting out of the corporate world. It's what I told myself when I went through a massive friendship breakup. It's what I tell myself anytime I feel that heart-wrenching moment in my life where I am down, because you are going to have those moments. So it's what's going to get you through, and it's reminding yourself that this is temporary.
And dare I say, all you got to do is keep hustling.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Jess, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.